Drawn to the mystery of unsolved crimes? Are you familiar with Pennsylvania? Welcome to Keystone Cold Cases, a podcast that revisits unsolved cases in Pennsylvania in an effort to bring these forgotten victims back into the light. Our podcast delves into real-life cold cases that have baffled investigators and left families in anguish. Join us as we discuss the facts of the case and provide our thoughts and opinions. Our passion for seeking justice is evident in the care with which we conduct our research. Why tune into Keystone Cold Cases? We all believe in our podcast and share the same vision of bringing these cases back into the public eye. We hope by covering these cases, we can encourage people to come forward with any knowledge and help bring solace to grieving families. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts or visit our Facebook and Instagram pages or our website at kccpod.com. New episodes currently drop every other Friday, perfect for your commute or some weekend downtime. For bonus content, you can subscribe to our Patreon. Truth may be dormant, but it's never forgotten. Join us on Keystone Cold Cases, where we remember Pennsylvania's forgotten victims.
You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're talking about Pennsylvania. So, Lauren?
Yes, Kenzie?
Let's get scary.
I miss you.
Well, I miss you too, but I didn't want to get you sick.
I know, thank you. So, to everyone who's listening, Mackenzie is sick with whatever has been going around, and we are recording separately, so
It's not COVID, so
yeah, thank God.
there's that plus.
But so we are in our weird thing again where I have a slight lag that she can't hear on her end, so things might be laggy. We might be interrupted. We don't know what's going to happen.
But don't worry, because we have two really great stories for you that will make you forget about the lagging and the congestion.
Well, let's hope so.
As I feel ridiculous using my mini mic.
We couldn't figure out how to do the other microphone, y'all. We started talking over an hour ago, and we are just now getting to recording.
And normally it's just like, oh, we were chit-chatting and catching up, but this was all technical difficulties.
And I wish, there are some times that I wish we did video, because right now Mackenzie is stuffing a tissue up her nose to stop it from running. It's just a great picture.
I'm just trying not to sniffle so much.
If anyone has what's going around, you understand.
Yes. And it's definitely more of like a chest cold, because it's like the cough is now dry.
Oh,
and painful.
That's worse because it's painful and it's not like doing anything.
Correct.
Yep.
Oh, my stomach hurts from coughing. So it's like my abs hurt.
Oh, I know. That's the worst. You get a good ab workout, though. Well, you think you do, and then you look and nothing's changed.
True. I have my bag of tissues.
Oh, you've seen my bag of tissues around the house.
Uh-huh. I was sitting on the couch and I was like, I can't just leave a stack of tissues on the table. So I got myself a little
You
bag.
do live there alone.
I do, but even I was grossed out by it.
Oh.
I like walked back over and like one of my things was like touching some of the tissues. I was like, that's disgusting, Mackenzie.
You're like, I am disgusting.
I middle named myself Mackenzie Lee. That is gross. I'm the only one that middle names myself. My parents don't even do that.
I feel like I have once or twice.
You do it
when
if
I'm trying to
say
make a
Lauren
point.
Kathleen.
Yes, that's true.
All right. Would you like to get into some Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania?
Yeah, that's what one of my coworkers used to call the area of Pennsylvania that she would go to visit her boyfriend's family. And I guess it's also now where they live. And
Pennsylvania doesn't touch Kentucky.
I'm aware. I also had this thought and conversation when she first said it, because I said, well, that's not. But I think the meaning behind it is that the people in Pennsylvania in this particular areas are similar to the people in Kentucky.
Ah.
If you're picking up what I'm throwing down.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we either just insulted people from Kentucky or Pennsylvania. I'm not really sure.
All right. Let's get into Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania is a perfect spot for a starry night. The precise coordinates on Earth, 41.6501 degrees north and 77.8164 degrees west of Cherry Springs State Park, give a window onto the Milky Way's nucleus. Ooh. There are several other reasons stargazers love this place. The park, in Pennsylvania's Potter County, sits atop a 2,300-foot high Allegheny Plateau surrounded by the remote Susquehannock State Forest. And the
Good
nights
job.
are Thank you. And the nights are famously darker here in the world's second gold tier ranked Dark Sky Park, the International Dark Sky Association's highest rating for stargazing than in any other place across the United States.
I didn't even know that there was a Dark Sky Association.
That's so cool.
Right? I thought so too.
And seeing 10,000 stars,
I know.
let's go.
Well, couple bullets down. Go ahead, read it.
The park has shielded its light and has converted its visible white light to red light, a color complement to the park's trees. I think I've been here, says Kenzie.
So, remember the first traumatic camping experience I had?
Oh, yes, I think we all do.
The original one that should have told me not to go on the second one?
Yes.
Well, when we went up to Pennsylvania and did the whitewater rafting, I think we stayed in this area because I remember it was the first time I ever saw the Milky Way.
Oh,
And everyone in the camp had decided to sleep out in this field that was right there. And I was, of course, terrified.
of course.
But as we were walking, as I was walking with my camp counselor, because she had to stay with me, which of course made me feel even worse. And as we're walking to like go to the bathroom, brush our teeth, that kind of thing, I see the Milky Way, and I was like, that is so cool.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, yeah, we could go sleep out there. And so I go, and everyone's cheering because they're all like, "Yay, you're not scared anymore." It was breathtaking. Truly, if it's the same place, which I'm pretty sure it is, because how many of those do we have around here these days?
Yeah, probably
Um,
not a lot.
it was by far the only good part of that trip was that experience. It was amazing.
That sounds beautiful. All right, Pennsylvania is one of the top states for coal mining. It also has the largest reservoir anthracite coal, a very hard pure variety in the nation.
I looked at that as if I was going to be able to help you read that.
Yeah, it's fine. I did what I needed to do. Washington Crossing State Park is where George Washington led his troops across the Delaware River and sprang a successful sneak attack during the Revolutionary War. I can confirm Delaware does touch Pennsylvania.
Yes, and you know that famous painting of him on a boat?
Mhm.
That's this.
Yeah,
Oh,
makes sense. They could have been a little bit more creative with the name Washington Crossing State Park. Like, what happened here?
I thought you meant the Delaware. I thought you were talking about the Delaware River.
No, the state park. And what also sucks about this delay on my side is I'll say something that I think like might be kind of funny or like profound, and then it's just silent, and then you make a noise. And I'm like, okay, either I really just embarrassed myself or something else is happening.
I forgot about that part of this. No, that was funny. What's funny to me is that because for me, it doesn't seem delayed, but your reactions are still semi-delayed based on what I say.
We're sorry, y'all. Pennsylvania is known for handmade pretzels, which were originally brought by German settlers, whoopie pies, and Philly cheesesteaks.
Bet you'll never guess where those are. Look at Pennsylvania with their obvious naming of things.
I know. William Penn was given the land that would become Pennsylvania by King Charles II in 1681 to satisfy a debt the king had with Penn's father. But Pennsylvania is not named after William Penn, at least not the one you think it was. It was named after his father, who was also William Penn. So technically.
All that one, I was like, I have to include this.
Here's probably what happened. William Penn Jr. was like, I want to name this place after me, but I can't be selfish. So I'm going to name it after my dad. So it's still going to be William Penn.
Right. But only he knew internally, secretly, this is really named after me.
Yeah, but I'm going to tell people it's my dad's. People are like, oh my God, that was so sweet of you.
Exactly.
From 1894 to 1908, Philadelphia City Hall was the tallest habitable building in the world at 548 feet in height. It is taller and has more rooms than the U.S. Capitol. Erie, Pennsylvania was the snowiest city in the United States, with a population over 100,000 during the 2013 to 2014 winter. The city received 138.4 inches of snow. Why did you include the population?
I copy and pasted.
Oh. In 1943, the Steelers and Eagles formed a combined team because neither could field a full team due to World War II. The team was called the Steagles, and they finished with a winning record. That's wild.
Like, the rest of that sentence, though, because this was from, like, a Pennsylvania fact page, and it was, like it said the running record, and then it was, like, something that the Philadelphia Eagles have yet to get or whatever.
Oh, that's hysterical.
But I thought it was
That's so funny. There is only one town in Pennsylvania, Bloomsburg. Everywhere else is either a city, borough, or township. That's cool.
And they're long. Like, these are cool facts.
They are cool facts. Meadowcroft Rock Shelter in Washington County, Pennsylvania, is the oldest known site of human habitation in North America, dating back 16,000 years. The only piece of Abraham Lincoln's tomb that was ever removed sits at the base of the Civil War Memorial in Lewistown, Pennsylvania. It was given to the community in honor of the Logan Guard, which were the first soldiers to volunteer to fight in the Civil War. Interesting.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I didn't know they had their own name.
Neither did I.
See, y'all learn something new every day.
Well, this is good because you got a pop quiz later.
Oh, good, good. I'm really paying attention. It'll be open book, too. The first complete Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton ever found is on display at the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Pittsburgh. Half of America's mushrooms are grown in or around Kennett Square in Pennsylvania. Leap the Dips at Altoon's Lakemont Park is the oldest still operating roller coaster in the world. It first ran in 1902. That doesn't sound very safe.
No.
Winter Wonderland was written about Central Park and Honesdale, Pennsylvania by native Dick Smith. The Foxburg Country Club in Clarion County is the oldest continuously used golf course in the United States. It first opened in 1887.
The thing that's cool about like places like Pennsylvania that have a lot of history to it is that you have the oldest blah blah blah, the oldest blah blah blah, the longest blah, blah,
Right.
blah. It's just so cool.
It is cool. The Wanamaker organ is the largest still operational pipe organ in the world. Oregon, not Oregon. It is located inside a Macy's department store in Center City, Philadelphia. Free concerts are offered 6 days a week. That's cool.
Yeah.
The Losh Run Box Huckleberry in Perry County is estimated to be 13,000 years old, making it one of the oldest living organisms in the world. Is that like a plant?
I assume so.
Because huckleberries. It was cut in half and nearly killed by the widening of Route 322 in the 1970s.
I figured it's
Good
like
thing
a
it wasn't.
tree of some kind based on the
That would make sense, yes. The American flag hanging in President Lincoln's booth during his assassination is on display at the Columns Museum in Milford. It still has Lincoln's blood on it. Ooh, that's not great.
No.
Well, Pennsylvania. We went there a lot for field trips.
Oh,
Well.
our Philly field trip.
Our Philly field trip. And then in high school, we did the Philly cheesesteak challenge, where I think we've talked about it before. Well, I didn't because I had cross country, so I had to be back at school in time. But the goal was to leave school at the first bell, drive up to Philadelphia, get a cheesesteak, and make it back by the last bell.
Who the fuck did that?
A lot of people did.
When?
It was a tradition.
Not any tradition I was a part of.
Oh, yeah, I was about to go, but I had to be back at school for a cross-country meet that afternoon that I didn't want to miss because I was a senior. And so if I didn't make it back by that final bell, I wouldn't have been able to, like, do cross-country, so I had to stay at school.
This is what happens when you date a troublemaker. They convince you to do shit like this. Just saying. I've never heard of this challenge.
I don't know how you didn't. Our, like, almost entire school did it. Where were you that day?
Wasn't it when I was having all my stomach issues and I was constantly at the doctor's? If you were doing cross country.
It was the beginning of the year then. Fall term or whatever. Fall semester.
Yeah, I can't remember when I had my stomach issues. I thought that was senior year.
Well, then maybe you were out and then a Philly cheesesteak really wouldn't have mixed well.
No, and plus I'd also missed pretty much all of junior year, so I highly doubt I could have skipped more days.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. We added something to it? Oh, spooky tea, right? Or scary tea?
Or scary tea.
All right, what spooky tea you pouring, Lauren?
Okay, so for this case, I wanted to thank our wonderful listener, Kelly, for recommending it to us.
I'm excited for this one.
It's tough.
Yeah.
So there is a blanket trigger warning for the entire thing. It involves death of a child, sexual assault, rape, and those awful things happening to a child. I don't love to do cases where children are the victims, but one of our listeners told us about it, and we like to bring awareness to those lesser known cases. So that's what I'm doing. So
Absolutely.
Just buckle up. It's not an easy one.
Okay.
All right. October 27th, 1992. 11-year-old Shauna Melinda Howe went to school dressed as a ballerina in a turquoise and black leotard. Later that day, still in her costume, she and her Girl Scout troop went to sing for senior citizens in the area.
Oh.
Afterwards, she went to her Girl Scouts Halloween party at the Free Methodist Church on Wilson Avenue in Oil City, Pennsylvania. The party ended around 8 p.m. and Shauna began her walk home. Her parents were expecting her home soon, but after 2 hours had passed and Shauna still wasn't home, her parents reported her missing to the Oil City Police Department. So Shauna was born on July 11th, 1981. She was described as being very pretty. Her parents had separated, but Shauna still had a great relationship with both, spending time at both parents' houses. Another thing about Shauna was that she loved Halloween. It was one of her favorite things, so very much exactly like us.
I was just about to say that.
So after her mom called the police, a search was immediately launched, with FBI agents, police officers, and volunteers combing the area and looking for Shauna. They searched for 2 full days and were coming up almost completely empty-handed. All that had been found at this point was a piece of her costume, which had been discovered on an abandoned hiking trail. Reportedly, it had been found by her father.
I'm sorry, I missed what he found.
He had found a piece of her costume, which had been discovered on an abandoned hiking trail.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes, so not good.
No.
So on the third day, October 30th, 1992, Shauna's body was found at the bottom of a 30-foot railroad bridge in the creek down below, 8 miles from town. So yet another trigger warning. So her autopsy revealed that she had been sexually assaulted and had ultimately died from blunt force trauma on her head and chest, leading to being believed that she was alive when she was thrown off the bridge into the creek bed and she died from the trauma of the fall.
Oh my God.
It's so dark. Upon this discovery, police immediately labeled this as a murder and launched an investigation. A $15,000 award for any information concerning Shauna was also issued. So today, Oil City is a little town of just over 9,000 residents in southwestern Pennsylvania, but back in 1992, it had just around 12,000. And our listener, Kelly, said that she was like around during this time, or at least like knew of what was going on. And so she said like it was a really, really scary time.
Oh, I'm sure.
So Oil City had always been known as a safe and quiet neighborhood, so a murder this brutal and especially to a child sent the city into a terrified frenzy.
Absolutely.
For the first time, residents were locking their doors at night, children were no longer allowed to walk around alone, and even Halloween changed. So it was limited to just a few hours in the afternoon. All nighttime trick-or-treating had been prohibited after the Oil City Council voted to ban it.
Oh,
This case also became a huge media frenzy, obviously.
sure.
So right away, a witness came forward with some information. This witness, local resident Dan Patton, said that around 8 p.m., the night of Shauna's disappearance, he reportedly saw a skinny, disheveled man approach a girl who matched Shauna's description. He then heard a scream and a car pulling away. He said this occurred at the corner of West 1st Street and Reed Street, which was only 2 blocks from Shauna's house.
Ugh.
Oh, God, like she was almost home.
Isn't there like a statistic of some kind of like things happening within like 5
5
miles of your house? 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 miles, 5 minutes, something like that, always.
Something like that. Yeah.
Because it's like you get more comfortable because you're in like your familiar territory.
Yeah.
Patton said that the man was thin and white, about 6 feet 2 inches tall with dark hair. The car was rust colored. Posters were distributed around town and posted all over, showing an early 1980s model Oldsmobile Omega with a dull red primer color. The poster mentioned that this was the car seen at the time of Shauna's abduction and that a white man had been driving. Roy keeps like, I can't hear anything because of my headphones. And so he
Yeah.
keeps like bolting out and staring at the front door. And it is so freaky because I can't hear anything. Ugh, I don't like it. So police soon tracked down a suspect who matched the witness's description and even drove a car similar to the one seen that night. 33-year-old Eldridge Ted Walker. So, of course, he was interviewed, but he denied knowing Shauna or having anything to do with her disappearance. So they have nothing on him. Fluids of some sort had been found on Shauna from 2 places on her body and clothing. Though DNA was still in its infancy at this point, it was able to be determined that these fluids had come from the same person.
Okay.
So Walker's DNA was compared with whatever they had at the time, but it wasn't a match,
Yeah.
so he was let go.
Yeah.
The DNA was then run through the system that was available at the time, and there were no matches. With their suspect pool nearly empty, police started asking the public for their help as well. Hundreds of calls came in and hundreds of cars were investigated, but none of the cars were the one they were looking for. After not much communication to the public about the investigation to this point, in January of 1993, police said that they finally had a suspect in mind. They were investigating a man who was wanted in Warren, Ohio, for repeatedly raping a 12-year-old newspaper carrier and threatening her with a gun.
Repeatedly?
Uh-huh. A sketch was drawn of this man with his blue eyes and sandy brown hair. The sketch was published in local newspapers, but nothing came of this. The police then went on to warn residents that Shauna's killer may still be lurking around Venango County, and that this person would be familiar with the area as well as surrounding areas. he probably lived, worked, and frequented these areas.
The guy who or the person who gave the description of, like, seeing the car and, like, hearing the scream,
Yeah.
did he say that the picture just didn't look like him? I felt like he had
I don't
could he
know.
not tell?
That part was just really glossed over.
Because it seemed like from what you said, he had, like, a solid description of the guy.
I feel like he had, like, a somewhat description, but not like,
Maybe
"Oh, no,
not.
those were his eyes, that was his hair color," you
Yeah.
know? Like, you
Yeah,
kinda see
yeah.
it off in the distance, like, "Oh, he's tall, he's white, he's 6'2", you know? That's kind of
Yeah.
the only
No, that makes
description
sense.
I can really give, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing else went in they never went into anything else kind of about that guy, so he was off
Mhm.
the radar at this point. So at this time, there were similar cases that had occurred in Missouri, New York, Alabama, Florida, California, Indiana, and Iowa.
Jesus.
Yes. So police set out trying to compare Shauna's murder to any of these to try to get a clue, a suspect, somewhere to start, but they found zero connections.
And so were these other cases, they were also murders or
I'm not sure. It just said similar cases, so I feel like maybe like an abduction and rape. It
Yeah.
again, where I found all of this stuff, it kind of would gloss over the outside details and kind of
Yeah.
just give us like, the meat and bones of everything. We didn't get like,
Sure.
all the sides and stuff.
Yeah.
Meat and potatoes, not meat and bones. That's the wrong way to say it.
Didn't even register. I was like, yeah, meat and bones.
Meat and
Hashtag.
bones makes sense. Hey, I mean, look at what we talk about every week. So, all right. So the FBI got involved, and the FBI behavioral analysts came up with a list of pre-event stressors that they believe may have triggered this person to kidnap Shauna.
Okay.
So they said that the person responsible lived in the area. They may have difficulties in relationships, money woes, problems with family members or significant others, and high stress. Just a few days later, they released yet another list. This one included behavior that could have been noticed after the crime in the perpetrator. So, behavior the
Mm,
perpetrator would have been exhibiting in the days following the murder,
okay.
such as preoccupation, changes in appearance, odd eating habits, drug or alcohol abuse, like new drug or alcohol abuse,
Yeah.
relationship problems, separation from society, interest in the investigation, or sudden unusual travel habits. So, what?
No, I'm just thinking that like every case we talk about when we're like, get the fuck out of town.
Right. So, though this kind of seemed like a shot in the dark, the police were hoping that this could potentially bring forward a suspect. Like maybe someone was like, oh, yeah, my coworker's been acting really weird lately. Like, they just wanted someone to come forward and be like, oh, yeah, this person's acting differently. This could be our suspect.
Yeah.
But pretty quickly, that suspect pool was also drying up. So Gianna Nairn, a former cafeteria worker who worked at Shauna's elementary school, said, quote, you just never forget about it. For something so brutal to happen to a small child and have it go unsolved, I've heard people say this is a quiet small town and has so much to offer. You ask, how could this happen in a small town? So Nairn, the lady who gave this quote, would also go on later to organize a vigil on the anniversary of Shauna's death.
Mm,
So it's like a very just like close little area.
sure.
In the following months and years, police were asking for less and less help from the public and providing less and less information into their investigation. But in
Mm,
October of 1996, they came forward with some new updates. So they said there was no evidence that Shauna was raped or mutilated, false, and that the abductor probably didn't want to hurt her, just make her his girlfriend, clearly
what?
false. Right, she's 12 or 11, she's 11.
What?
And that the killing was probably accidental after the situation escalated out of control.
What?
Yeah. So they're going back on literally everything that they had said beforehand, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it was probably just a dude who wanted to be her like, have her as his girlfriend, and things got out of control, so she was killed." It's like,
We've heard police say a lot of stupid shit, but I think this might top it.
right, that's why I put it in here. These are all clearly false. Even I, who know way less about this case than the cops, I know that's false.
Yeah, that just doesn't even make sense.
So they also said, though, that it seemed that this person had been working alone.
Okay.
Now they're thinking we're just looking for one person. The police also stated that at the time, there were a number of suspects that they were looking into, but no names were given and no additional information was ever provided. Just, we have some suspects. Over the years, police continued to follow leads that took them from Armstrong County to New York back to Oil City. 2 residential basements, one in Oil City and one in Franklin, were searched. But overall, the police were quiet about their work, which they attributed, quote, to the nature and sensitivity of the case.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah. In 2001, an anonymous tip came through from a person who said they saw something at the time of Shauna's abduction. They said that they saw a tall, shaggy-haired, bispectacled man hanging around Franklin's 7th Street Elementary School. So bispectacled means glasses. And the 7th Street Elementary School was the school that Shauna went to.
Yeah.
So for over 10 years, Shauna's disappearance remained a complete mystery. Then in 2002, the case experienced a major breakthrough.
Mm.
A determination was made that the fluid found on Shauna had, in fact, been seminal fluid. We hate that.
But no, she wasn't sexually assaulted.
Right, yeah.
Bro,
I know. That DNA was then run through the system, which was now much more advanced at this time, and a DNA profile came forward that matched the fluid. The DNA found on Shauna did match the genetic fingerprints of a man named James O'Brien.
is that the guy from whatever that state was? That they
Ohio?
were yeah.
No.
Okay.
It's just a different guy.
Okay.
So O'Brien hadn't even been considered a suspect back in 1992 because police incorrectly assumed that he had been in jail at the time of the murder. So they
Only
thought
that
he
there
was in
was-
jail.
If only there was a system that would have records of who was in jail and when, that they could have looked up that information.
Yep. But at the time his DNA was matched, O'Brien was being held in custody on the charge of attempting to kidnap a woman. I'll just keep going. His brother Timothy's DNA also matched a hair fiber that had been found on Shauna's clothing. At the time, Timothy too was in jail. He had been accused of sexually assaulting children. See, I wish people could see your face, one, with the slow blinking, but also with the tissue in the nose. It's really a sight.
I regret turning on my tall lamp so you could see my face.
But yes, so we have Timothy and James O'Brien, who are brothers, and both are in jail currently when this DNA is found to match them to being near Shauna. They're both in jail for different awful things. One's a kidnapping charge and one's a sexual assault charge.
It's like moments like these, I'm like, this is exactly how I feel when it comes to like social issues, because people are saying, hey, here's the answer to this problem. Just follow these steps. Here you go, right here. It's like, in this investigation, here's all the information that you need. You just got to put it together. And they're like, oh.
Right. So this breakthrough threw the case wide open again, and Pennsylvania was swarmed by the FBI and the Pennsylvania State Police. At this point, police turned their attention back to their original suspect, Ted Walker.
Why?
Because when they were kind of looking into James and Timothy, it didn't really go into this, but this is what I put together. When they had James and Timothy kind of where they needed to be, they brought up Ted Walker's name.
Oh.
And because he had been he had been a suspect from the beginning as well, so now they're kind of like bringing him back into it.
Okay.
And also on March 14th, 2002, his home was searched. But like I said, we never really hear much information about some of these things. So his home was searched. Don't know what happened with that. So Walker was brought in and interviewed, where his story changed many times. But he finally talked about what happened on October 27th, 1992. So when he was re-interviewed, he admitted to having a role in the girl's abduction. Because first off, he says he doesn't know Shauna, right? Now he knows about the abduction.
Now he's played a role.
He said his role was that he may have opened his house to some really bad people once, and they may have done a disgusting thing. Okay, so he goes a little bit more into it. He said that he teamed up with the O'Brien brothers, Timothy and James, to play a prank on Walter's son. They planned to kidnap one of his son's friends as a Halloween prank. So the plan was to pick up a kid, then drop them off at their home later, just to like scare his son and scare the kid. I don't really understand why that's a joke you wanted to do.
This is when CPS comes in handy.
Right. So they then changed their minds last minute and decided to kidnap someone in a way to make fun of the local police force. And to make sure it garnered attention, they decided to abduct a girl. They were like, oh, a boy's not going to get that much attention, but a girl will.
How exactly is this making fun of police?
I don't know. It seems like they wanted to pick up the child, have police search for them, and then like give the child back and be like, look at how awful you were. Yeah. They wanted to like make fun, embarrass the police force, but I don't know. So Walter said, it is dumb. It is dumb.
So dumb.
So Walter said that he did pick a child, Shauna. He forced her into his car and drove to his house where the O'Brien brothers were waiting.
And he had a child, right?
He does have a child, but I don't think the child lives with him
Okay.
because there's no way he could have done all this stuff. Walker then said that the brothers took Shauna to a bedroom upstairs. He didn't follow them upstairs, and this is really bad, but he said that he did hear Shauna scream, "Get off me, let me up, let me go," from upstairs. Walker said that when he heard that and when the brothers threatened his own son, he demanded that the brothers leave. So he, I guess, like, tried to get them to stop, but then they threatened his son. So he just kind of backed off and told them they had to get out of his house. So the brothers and Shauna then left the house, at which point Walker said that Shauna was still alive. Yeah.
What's crazy to me is as a father, he did this. Like, that's what I am
Right.
like, you are a father.
Right. Like, you know what the parents are going through. If this were happening to you,
And when your child gets threatened, oh,
right,
that's when you're
right.
like, wait a
Now
minute.
it's too much.
So what's the difference between your child and
I know. So Walker's home was again searched by the Pennsylvania State Police, but again, I don't think anything really came from it because nothing else is mentioned. Walker tried to say that he didn't approve of the crime, but that he also hadn't turned his friends in to the authorities. Right. So police used this to make a deal with Walker. They said that if he testified against the O'Brien brothers, he could instead plead guilty to kidnapping and third-degree murder. This would reduce his sentence down to 40 years. From Britannica.com, third-degree murder is, quote, "The victim was a police officer or other law enforcement official. The perpetrator killed the victim in a particularly gruesome fashion, such as by poison or torture. The perpetrator ambushed the victim, or the perpetrator killed more than one person." So I think in this situation, it would be either a particularly gruesome fashion or that they had been ambushed.
ambush? Yeah.
So he's going to be charged now with kidnapping and third-degree murder rather than first or second-degree murder and all of the other charges that could be piled on for this.
Okay.
So as long as he agrees to plead guilty and testify against the brothers. So in 2004, the O'Brien brothers were finally arrested and charged with kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder. And in September of 2005, Walker agreed to the plea deal. So the case went to trial in October of 2005, 13 years after the original incident, and it was overseen by Venango County Judge Oliver J. Lobog. The jury of the case had to be selected in Indiana County due to the extensive publicity that surrounded it in its current county. So they had to try to
Makes
find
sense.
people who may not have heard as much about it, so they went to a different county.
Yeah.
The O'Brien brothers were facing charges of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, kidnapping, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping.
Ew.
Second-degree murder is also known as felony murder, and it carries a mandatory life sentence without the chance of parole. So it's not premeditated, and it occurs during the commission of a felony crime. So in this case, the kidnapping. So the felony crime is the kidnapping, and because the murder occurred during the kidnapping, that's why it's second degree, not first degree.
I thought that it could also make it a capital crime. Or is that just in some places?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay.
But
Is it different? I'm assuming it's different in every state, right? Because they make their own laws for that.
I am not sure. That's a
Okay.
good question, but I feel like generally for second, third degree murder all follow the same criteria.
Yeah, well, because I just thought that first degree.
It's premeditated.
Okay, so and like done with like deliberance, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
more the premeditated part of it, and then second degree is like the murder happens because of something else. So you weren't
Okay.
planning on murdering, but that ended up being the outcome.
Got it. Okay.
And then third degree was the definition I read just a little bit before.
Right.
So the prosecution called up many, many witnesses. One of those witnesses being Ted Walker. So he followed through with his part of the plea and testified about the brothers in court. He gave his story, explained his limited involvement, and went into the details of the much more intense involvement of the brothers. So, he's this innocent bystander who picked up the kid, but other than that, he did nothing.
Right.
A man named Ryan Heath was then called to testify. He
Oh
said
my
that
god, I have a Heath in my story.
Do you really?
I do.
Oh, I wonder if they're cousins. So he said that in 2001, he and Timothy O'Brien were cellmates and were cellmates for about 8 months. While in jail together, Timothy O'Brien told Heath about what he had done that night and concluded by saying that he had thrown Shauna off of a bridge. An expert witness testified that Shauna had a dislocated shoulder and a broken arm, stating that from that, it was evidence that she had tried to break her fall, meaning she was indeed alive at the time she was thrown from the bridge.
Oh, poor baby.
Oh my God. Yeah. I can't think too much about it. It makes me really sad. An FBI agent, Sean Van Slyke, also testified and said that back in 2002, when the DNA analysis report came back, he laid it out in front of James O'Brien in March of that year. He said that O'Brien simply dropped his head and didn't say anything. But when O'Brien finally spoke, he told Van Slyke that he wasn't going to deny what authorities already knew.
Well,
Right. So then it's the defense's turn. The brothers, Timothy, 39 at the time, and James, 34 at the time, started off by pleading not guilty. They stuck to their story, saying that Walker was the one responsible for the kidnapping, rape, and murder of Shauna. But then we have the DNA evidence against them.
I was just about to say.
Well, this is what their defense tried to say.
Oh, God.
The defense tried to say that the DNA had been transferred from an earlier encounter that James had with a woman named Heather. They had had sex in the same bedroom where he says that Shauna was later molested by Walker. So they're trying to say that, like, yes, I was in that room. My DNA definitely got on the bed because I had sex with Heather. And then when Shauna was in the bed, that's how the DNA got on her. So the prosecution was like, okay, where's this Heather woman's DNA?
Yeah.
If your DNA is
Yeah.
in there, hers is going to be in there. There's no Heather. No DNA from a Heather was found. No DNA from anyone other than the O'Briens and Shauna was found.
Correct.
If it had been found, okay, likely story,
Could have been
but
plausible.
it wasn't.
Maybe.
Right, maybe, but it wasn't. Their defense teams also tried to push that it was Walker who was responsible for the murder, not the brothers. Wayne Huntermark, I'm just going to call him Mr. H because I don't like his name. James's lawyer said, quote, I submit to you, Shauna did not die by falling from the trestle, which is like the overhead thing. She was murdered by Walker. Mr. H went on to say that Hunter did know Shauna before the kidnapping, contradicting Walker saying that he didn't know her, which is what his story was changing. So Walker's niece
Right.
and a former coworker even said that he did know Shauna before the night of the kidnapping.
I mean, probably. We know that
even
was
his-
definitely a lie.
Right, even his own family's coming at him and is like, no.
Yeah.
Mr. H said that Walker was stalking Shauna, waiting for her as she walked home that night. He went on to say that Walker lied about the car he was driving that night because witnesses told jurors that one of Walker's cars smelled of rotting flesh just days after the abduction.
Ew.
Mr. H said that Walker said his story ended when the O'Briens left the house with Shauna, but Mr. H continued on, saying that evidence will show that Walker had actually called his ex-wife that night and told her that there had been a kidnapping in Oil City and that the body would be found in Coulter's Hall, which is where she was ultimately found. He finished up by saying that Walker threw her there after he killed her all by himself. So at this point, Dr. Isidore Milhalakis, a forensic pathologist, testified. He had been called to review Shauna's 1992 autopsy report. He said that Shauna, quote, and this is also really bad, that she, quote, fell from the bridge, struck a concrete pillar, scraped her side, and then put her arm out in front of herself to break her fall into the creek bed below. The impact broke her arm, dislocated her shoulder, and left her with fatal chest and head injuries.
Oh, poor baby.
So he confirmed that she had to be conscious when she fell, not already dead, like Mr. H was trying to say.
Right.
And then, okay, let me get to the end of this part, and then I'll tell you kind of one of my thoughts.
Okay.
Then Mr. H stood and noted that Shauna's time of death was determined to be sometime. Okay, and if you get confused with this part, please let me know because it was hard to write up.
Okay.
So if you're confused, let me know. I'll try to explain a little bit better.
Okay.
So Mr. H stood and noted that Shauna's time of death was determined to be sometime between 2:30 p.m. on October 28th
Mhm.
and 2:30 a.m. October 29th.
So
Remember, we
12-hour
don't find her until October 30th.
12-hour window.
Yes. Her
Okay.
bodysuit had been found about 300 yards from where her body was found on that
Okay.
hiking trail, several hours after morning on October 29th. So early morning of October 29th.
Right. Okay.
He said that people had searched that area where she had been found, but that when they had searched the first time, she wasn't there.
Is that true?
I'm not sure. So this is what Mr. H is saying. So he asked Mikalakis if his opinion would change about Shauna's death if her body was not under the bridge on October 29th. So trying to say like, oh, the death happened at a different time.
Mm-hmm.
So Mihalakis said it would change his like sorry, Roy, like was trying to get out because I closed the curtains and he kept stepping on it, which was pulling it tighter so he couldn't get through it. Okay. So Mihalakis said that it would change his original time of like Shauna's death, but he would need irrefutable evidence that the body was not there, like when they searched, in order for that to happen. So
Okay. Here's my thing though. Even with the timing of when or not the body was there, we're just still skipping over the fact that like these doctors are saying that she was alive in order to receive those injuries.
yes, and this is where I come up to why are they not being charged with first-degree murder?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know it's on the table, but to me, this is a clear first-degree murder trial because she's
It was
alive when you threw
deliberate.
her over. So you, at
Yes.
that point, you are knowing what you're doing when you are throwing her over that ledge.
Absolutely.
It's not, oh, the killing happened in the like process of this kidnapping. Like, no.
No.
She was alive and you threw her over while she was alive. That's premeditated.
Correct. That was deliberate.
Quote, Ted Walker is a murderer, a child molester. He's evil, he's sadistic, and he's cruel. And the prosecution's made a deal with him, Mr. H roared to the jury. He's evil, he's every parent, every neighbor's worst nightmare. He's a child molester and he's a liar. He's hoping he gets less time because he's a weasel and he turned other people in. So Mr. H is mad.
Oh, yeah.
So for 2 weeks, the jury made up of 10 women and 8 men listened to the state police troopers, FBI agents, DNA experts, witnesses who
Wait,
claimed they saw...
10 women and 8 men?
Yeah.
That's more than 12.
Yeah, I don't know. This jury was made up of 18.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. Witnesses who claim they saw Walker the night of the abduction, Walker's family members, and several other witnesses. So they listened to everything.
Yeah.
They saw photos of Shauna's body when it was found. They saw maps showing the route she had taken that night. They even visited the location where her body was found. In the end, the jury deliberated for 16 hours over a 2-day period. Ultimately, the jury acquitted the brothers on the first-degree murder charge, but none of the other charges. So they were charged with second-degree murder, kidnapping, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. They were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But still, I think it should have been first and second-degree murder because what we just said, with it being intentional of throwing her over the bridge.
And, like, if she's like, okay, here's like my wondering too, is because obviously the place where they threw her over is not the place that they assaulted her.
Right.
And so when they were leaving that place, was she unconscious and they were getting rid of the body and threw it over and didn't know she was alive
I don't know.
because she was knocked out? Or was she still conscious? No.
Conscious.
Yeah. And they were just getting rid of her. Because
I don't know.
feel like, I mean, either one, not okay. But if you're a jury, I'm thinking of like if you're a person on a jury and you don't know that information,
Right.
then that
And
would make me be hesitant to say first degree.
and we never find out because the entire time they said they were innocent.
Right. Of course.
So they're never going to admit what they did.
Yeah. Well, if Walker kicked him out of their house, he would have seen her whether or not she was conscious.
No, yeah,
I can't say that word.
Walker saw her leaving alive.
Oh, okay.
Right. He saw the brothers and Shauna leave. So the last he saw her, she was alive.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if he knew she was alive, then they knew she was alive.
Right. So the brothers showed zero emotion as the jury's verdict was read aloud, which is quite opposite to how they were acting while awaiting the verdict, where they were chatting and chuckling with one another. Shauna's family had quiet celebrations when the verdict was read, hugging one another and crying. James is serving a sentence at State Correctional Institute Phoenix in Collegeville, and Timothy is serving his at the State Correctional Institute Green in Waynesburg. And Walker did plead guilty to third-degree murder and kidnapping, like his plea deal, like he said he would, and he was sentenced to only 20 to 40 years in prison. As of 2021, he is serving his time at the State Correctional Institute Albion in Erie County. So after the verdict, Lucy, Shauna's mother, said, quote, "This is justice. I still have a hole in my heart, but I need it to be solved. It took a little girl's life. They spent 12 years living their lives. My daughter would have been 24, but what does she have? Nothing." Shauna's uncle, Keith Sybil, said, quote, "We've been waiting for this for almost 13 years and we couldn't be happier. We prayed all day long. Now we know these people are done." So a Megan's Law hearing took place for the brothers after their sentencing.
Okay.
So Megan's Law, quote, "is the name of a federal law, an informal name for subsequent state laws in the United States requiring law enforcement authorities to make information available to the public regarding registered sex offenders." So this law came in response to the murder of a 7-year-old New Jersey girl, Megan Kanka, who was raped and killed in 1994 by a neighbor convicted of past sexual assaults on young girls. So after her death, Megan's mother campaigned for laws that notify communities where these sexual offenders were living.
And now we got the registry.
Exactly. So this was a big kind of push into that. So it's called Megan's Law to make sure that people who have these violent crimes, like people in the community, know about it.
Correct.
So there were 2 separate back-to-back hearings presided over by the same judge, Judge Oliver L. Lobog. He listened to testimony from a member of the Sexual Offenders Assessment Board. They recommended the judge classify the brothers as sexually violent predators.
Oh.
So Brenda Mano, a licensed social worker, says there are 15 criteria to look at when labeling someone as a sexually violent predator. Some of those factors include the relationship between the victim and the offender, the mental capacity of the victim, and whether the offender exceeded the means to achieve the offense.
Okay.
So factors also considered were the brothers' extensive criminal history and background,
Mhm.
So Timothy O'Brien had crimes dating back to March of 1983 to include retail theft, disorderly conduct, theft by unlawful taking, burglary, and corruption of minors.
Theft by unlawful taking. That
Yeah.
seems redundant.
I feel like sometimes they just try to pile whatever they can.
Yeah.
He had charges in various cases over a number of years. I didn't want to go into all of the years.
Sure.
But in July of 1994, he had been charged with allegedly providing a 16-year-old girl with beer, then snapping nude Polaroid photos of her.
Ew.
He was in jail again about a decade later for sexually assaulting a 7-year-old girl and an 11-year-old boy. Like, they're disgusting pieces of
Oh
humans.
my God.
He was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder and a pedophilia mental abnormality.
No shit.
The Sexual Offenders Assessment Board determined him to be a sexually violent predator. James O'Brien had a criminal history dating back to 1989.
1892.
18. This was the year he turned 18, so he could have had a criminal history dating before that, but since he would have been
We
a
just don't
minor, we
know.
wouldn't have heard about it.
Yeah.
So his crimes included receiving stolen property, burglary, possession of instruments of a crime, theft, and fraud. He had been arrested quite a few times, over 7 times throughout many different years.
Mhm.
In July of 1995, he was arrested for cracking a 22-year-old woman's head against the ground, then trying
my-
to stuff her into the trunk of his car.
Oh my God.
In this case, he had been convicted of attempted kidnapping, simple assault, and unlawful restraint.
Simple.
Right. So after this attack, a psychologist was asked if he had planned to rape or kidnap the woman. Mano said that O'Brien said that he wanted to do something worse.
Ah.
He had no previous mental health diagnoses. Mano said she believes he falls under the classification of personality disorder, not otherwise specified. So that he has some disorder, but we don't 100% know. So he too was qualified as being a sexually violent predator. So that kind of puts it even more like already the second-degree murder charge says that they can't get parole, but this just kind of locks it in that there's nothing that can happen where they are going to get out. Even if, like, I don't know, something happens with something, this is like that sticking point that they're not getting out. They're labeled, this is them.
And even if they're labeled that way too in jail, hopefully that makes their life a living hell.
God, I hope so. I hope so. So a candlelit walk was held on October 27th, 2005 for the memory of Shauna Howe. The route for the walk traced what was believed to be Shauna's last steps. Those who were unable to join the walk were encouraged to turn on their porch lights. A memorial stone was also to be placed in the ground at the location where Shauna was abducted. Her killers were finally behind bars, but that trick-or-treating ban was still in effect at this point. So in 2008, residents petitioned the city council to change the ruling. 15 years after the ban had been set, it was finally lifted in time for Halloween that year.
Wow.
Oh, so that is the case of Shauna Howe.
That's insane.
I know. And
There's
it's
a lot of
so sad.
and I know this is probably not like a question that you would have the answer to, more just like thinking out loud. Because I know like in the early 90s, like DNA was new and they were just starting things out. They were obviously able to determine that the DNA, didn't you say it came from the same person?
Yeah, so there were 2 spots of DNA, one found near her mouth and one found on her clothing. And they were able to determine that both of those DNA because you can kind of see like the pattern of DNA at that time. They were able to tell like not who it belonged to, but that it came from the same person,
And
which was
so
James O'Brien.
I don't know. I guess I just wonder like when they started taking criminals' DNA and putting it into the system.
I'm not sure actually. That's a really good question because like even back then they didn't know how far DNA would come, but they were still collecting samples of things.
Right, exactly.
So I'm not sure, but I guess they had to have been doing it at some point because James and Timothy were both in the system.
I guess I'm just wondering like when they did that for them and if like how the system works in the sense of like, okay, like maybe later on they get arrested, they get their DNA put into the evidence and then it's put in and then the system is like, oh, wait a minute, these two match, or does it have to be searched for? You know what I mean?
I feel like maybe once the like offender's DNA is in the system, they take the piece of DNA they have and then just run it throughout the entire system to see if it is a match to anyone in the system.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And so I'm just like wondering, I don't know why something didn't register sooner, I guess.
I guess maybe they just didn't have that ability at the time to do the testing, like to get it to match. But yeah.
People are terrible.
It's so terrible. And like one of the things, a quote that I read, and like it was like, yeah, someone was like, I just can't even imagine the terror that she was feeling. Oh,
I don't even
Oh,
want to imagine.
it's so tough. It's so tough. That's why like kid cases are just
It's too hard.
so hard. Like every murder is bad and sad, but when it's a kid, it's just that much worse.
And it's, you know, everyone I feel like in society can agree that there's a level of innocence that children have that
Yes.
you can tell that as a society, we've all determined like off limits, they're children.
Right.
And so I feel like because we as a whole have decided, because there's so many things that like people are like back and forth on, but that's like, I feel like the one thing that everyone pretty much is in agreement with, not no bueno.
Right.
And so I think that's why it weighs heavier on people because we're all kind of in this collective, but we agreed, you know, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree. Children are much harder.
Yeah. But yep, so that's the really, really sad case of Shauna Howe.
Well, you covered it well.
Thank you. It was very tough.
Yes, you did a good job with it.
Ugh, thank you. All right, Mackenzie, on this interesting night we're having, what do you have to tell us?
Okay, we'll just get right into it. No hesitation. So, most people can't really see the upside of having a terrible memory. When really it only frustrates the people who do remember things. So, I've lived my life pretty happily. What makes this flaw so great is that I can rewatch things over and over because I have forgotten what happened or what was said in the first place.
It's almost like a superpower.
I know. Same goes for when I write something down and come back to it way later. I tell you all this because this story is from my list and I totally didn't remember what it was about. And to my lovely surprise, this is a beauty of a government conspiracy theory and treasure.
You love those.
I do. So get your tinfoil hats and red string ready because we have a possible government cover up.
Oh, yes.
Dun, dun, dun. I was going to have sound effects for this one, but
We're too far in.
yeah. There's a legend that 26 gold bars had been buried in the Allegheny Mountains of Pennsylvania. The legend was first recorded in 1963 in a document called the Lost Gold Ingot Treasure. That was found in the archives at the Military History Institute in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. In early 1863, a shipment of 26 gold bars belonging to the U.S. government was sent to Philadelphia to the U.S. Mint office in order to pay for the war effort. Pop quiz, do you know the war I'm talking about?
What year are we?
1863.
Revolution. Civil. No.
Correct. The Civil War was in its infancy. The Civil War was in its infancy, and gold payments or shipments were vital to the Union effort. And, pop quiz, who was president during the Civil War?
Lincoln.
Correct.
Yes!
Lincoln was very reliant on the gold to pay soldiers and pay off foreign debts. Those are the only two questions I asked. You're fine.
Good, because if those were on the AP exam, I totally would have passed.
I saw an opportunity and I was like, she knows the Civil War, right? Nope.
I got nervous. I overthought it. Because I was like, it's not the Civil War. That would be too obvious. And I was like, she's trying to trick me. But I know the Revolutionary War was way before that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. I just got nervous. It's stage fright when it's history.
It's okay. It's okay. So the 26 gold bars were going to travel via caravan from Wheeling, West Virginia to Philadelphia. Avi, during a war, or really in general, you can't go lugging 26 bars around town all willy-nilly.
Right.
The gold was protected by 11 Union soldiers who dispersed it across 3 wagons. The soldiers had a 350-mile journey ahead of them, but about 60 miles in, they had to detour from the original path. Southern soldiers were getting closer to Pennsylvania, and the Union men didn't want to run into the possibility of getting robbed. They decided to take a detour up the Allegheny River towards Dent's Run. The legend says that it was around Dent's Run that one of the wagons broke down, although this part kind of varies depending on the source. But
right.
Most of them say that 3 of the soldiers left to go get help. It was days before they returned with reinforcements, and when they arrived, all the gold and the soldiers gone without a trace.
Oh no.
So one legend says that the remaining Union soldiers carried what they could and buried the rest around Dent's Run. However, there's no official government document with records of lost gold or that had even been found. Some people believe that you can't find records of it in the National Archives because it would have been a huge embarrassment to Lincoln.
Yeah.
Yeah. Others said it could possibly have caused an economic panic for that much gold to be missing.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly, teams from Pinkerton Detective Agency scoured the hills of Dunn's Run. So, side note, all I ever found for how much money these 26 gold bars would be, people said hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I mean, it makes sense.
So basically, 26 gold bars equates to a fuck ton of money.
Our mathematical answer.
And I might even be misquoting the hundreds of thousands of dollars. It might be hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. Which is, yeah. It might have been hundreds of thousands of dollars then, but now it's got to be hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars.
It has to be.
Hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. Okay. In 1974, Treasure magazine brought the lost gold legend to the attention of the public. The article claims that in 1865, 2.5, maybe 3, gold bars were found under a tree 4 miles from the spot where the wagons were abandoned. I don't understand how it's a half, because gold does not seem like something that you could just break in half easily.
Yeah, like half for me, half for you.
Right. Later on, they would find, and I only saw this in a couple of places, but supposedly later on, they did find 3 to 5 human skeletons, but the rest of the gold remained missing. So they didn't find all of the soldiers.
Right.
Based on some documentation, there's like one guy who survived and like maybe told the story. That's all.
Okay.
It's weird.
Right.
One of the people I talk about who wrote a really good article about this kind of brought up like the idea of, how did this person know so much detail of something that happened 100 years ago that there's no records of?
Right, right.
So everything is a little fishy, but you can't have a treasure hunt without a legend.
No, right, of course.
So since then, there has been a steady stream of treasure hunters in the area. Some have claimed to have found gold bar here and there, but nothing has ever been corroborated. That was until 2005 when Dennis Parada and his son Kem, that's Kem with an M, not Ken like Ken and Barbie. Just so you know.
Thank you.
Were exploring the dry riverbed and discovered some artifacts and a possible hideout. They found what looked like a fire pit, and they dug about 6 inches down and found some bottles, broken glass, an animal trap, and bullets all around the area.
Oh.
They believed that all the things that they had found were dated around the Civil War period. While exploring this area, Dennis noticed a small cave in the mountain. It had just enough room for them to crawl inside, and they believed they found signs that they were not the first humans to enter the cave. So when I saw pictures of this cave, there's definitely, you have to crawl. But I was like, Lauren could never. But then there gets to be a part later where there's other shit in the cave that also is like, Kenzie could never.
Right. So this is just not a place for us to go.
No, but I'll get there. Because it was too dangerous to climb further into the cave, Dennis and his son, who ran a treasure hunting company called Finders Keepers, so clever.
Oh, that's cute.
Decided to drill a hole into the ground above the cave and see if they could find traces of gold. Around 2014, they drilled about 8 feet down, and the machine was registering that there was gold. Dennis and his son were ecstatic that they found something after all these years that they had put into searching for it. They had been doing their due diligence and following up with government officials, having all the correct permits. However, when they went back to the state government and said, "Hey, look, we found something. Can we go dig it up?" They said, "No, you cannot."
So why did they go back and ask if they already had all the permits and stuff?
Because it was on state land.
But even if they had the permits, they still had to get more permission?
They had the permits, I think, to be there. I don't think they had the permits to, like, dig.
But they were already digging. Oh, no, they were using the thingy.
They drilled.
Right. Well, that's digging.
Yeah, but it was just like a whoop, whoop. And it, like, on the drill, there was, like, a smear of gold.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So it wasn't like they dug something out and had, like, a gold bar. It was, like, based on their readings from their machines, it was like, there's gold down here. Can we dig it up to see if we're right?
Okay.
And the state was like, no.
Well, of course the state would say no.
Yeah. Well, it gets better.
Okay.
So Warren Gettler was a reporter for the Wall Street Journal and co-author of Rebel Gold, a book exploring the possibility of buried Civil War era caches of gold and silver. And he wanted to help Dennis out and told him that he could get him in touch with the FBI.
Oh.
Gettler believed that the only way they could see the treasure come out of the ground is if the FBI dug it up. So instead of going state, they went above the state and they're like, "Hey, FBI,
Which help us out here."
So what happens next is highly up to debate. And most of this story is told from the perspective of Dennis Parada. But that's not his fault because the FBI is doing what the FBI does and keeping their fucking mouth shut,
Yep.
which doesn't help. So with the help of his friend, Warren, the Paradas were sent to talk with the FBI. The FBI agreed to look into it, and on January 31st, 2018, Parada, Gettler, and Kem guided the FBI agents to the spot where they had found the gold. The FBI used a metal detector, which indicated a 3x5 area of buried metal.
Oh.
The Paradas used their own ground-penetrating locator machine to demonstrate what they had previously found at the site. Their machine also showed gold readings right away. Dennis told a reporter for The Atlantic, quote, "Everybody's yelling and screaming because it's solid gold." He had told the FBI that he had estimated there to be about 2.5 tons just below them. A find that would be worth $100 million or more. It
Wow.
was just two tons. The FBI agent's interest peaked, and over the next few weeks, emails and text messages went back and forth as the government solicited all of the potentially relevant historical documentation. The FBI conducted a series of scanning tests using a gravimeter, which measures density. And so the density of gold is 19.5. Now it's grams per centimeter cube, but I'm not going to say all that. But just so you know. And sandstone, which is what they were digging up, is only 2.5.
Oh.
So the survey detected something, quote, with a density of 9.5 and consistent with a mass having a weight of approximately 8.5 to 9 tons.
Oh my gosh.
So that's like triple what they thought was below there.
Right.
Agent Jack Archer from the Art Crimes Division was part of the investigation, and he had called Gettler with results. He told The Atlantic, quote, "I said, what was the volume? What was the size?" He said, 7 to 9 tons. I went, "You gotta be fucking kidding me." My heart's going boom, boom, boom. I literally jumped out of my face. That's how you know someone's excited when they can't even get the phrase right.
Right. Like the meat and bones.
Yeah, exactly. So the FBI got a warrant from a federal judge to dig up the area in Dunn's Run. So this is where it kind of gets. The Paradas and Gettler weren't allowed in the area when the FBI was digging up the dirt.
Okay.
After just 2 days of digging, the FBI showed the Paradas and Gettler the empty hole. The men were dumbfounded. They could not believe that there had been nothing that had been found.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis retrieved the footage from his hidden cameras, and it showed FBI. That's what I said when I thought that too.
Oh,
It showed FBI.
genius.
I know. It showed FBI agents in the area late at night, which led him to believe that the FBI worked outside of their federal warrant hours.
Mm-hmm.
So they were only permitted to dig in the area from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. for 14 days.
That would make sense.
So Dennis believes that they came back at nighttime and dug until the next morning.
Wow.
He also believes that the FBI found the gold and carried away under the cover at night. When the Paradas and Gettler went back to the area, they found no readings of gold anywhere like they had previously found.
Wow. See, I was going to say that's what they need to do to go check.
To this day, the FBI claims that they have never found anything and that there's no cover-up of evidence.
Of course. Like, why would they say, "Oh yeah, we covered it up"?
I would just love, because it would flabbergast everybody. I would just love for there to be this cover-up or whatever, and the FBI person is just like, yeah, no, we covered that up, 100%.
Yeah, we didn't want anyone to know. That was what we did.
You know, I feel like people would be less irritated if they were honest.
Honestly, yeah. I
Like,
think I'd be less mad about situations.
I always tell my kids, I'm like, if you do something wrong, it happens. But if you lie to me about it, it's going to be so much worse.
That's where the bigger issue is.
Exactly. So an FBI spokesperson, Carrie Adam Wazowski.
Oh, Mike Wazowski.
That's what I hope it is. Said, quote, "No gold or other items of evidence were located or collected. The FBI continues to unequivocally reject any claims or speculation to the contrary." The Paradas say otherwise.
Yeah.
So like I said earlier, this story is mainly told from the perspective of the Paradas. And since they were the supposed victims of this story, I'm going to tell you their side of the events with some extra info.
Okay.
And you can decide if the Paradas have spun a beautiful narrative or if the FBI is really as shady as most of us already believe.
Oh God. Okay.
So let's back up. Give you a full perspective of the Paradas and their passion for finding this treasure.
Yes, please.
So Dennis Parada makes a living from the 18 rental apartments he owns. 11 of them are in a large building around the back of his house. He told The Atlantic that the building cost him $475. The reporter confirmed through records that Dennis bought the property in 1982 for $475.
Like, no extra zeros after that. Wow. We will literally never in our lives see that. Maybe we can get like one of those little tyke playhouses for that much, but
Right? The Paradas haven't made any money from their treasure hunting business and have spent about $60,000 on the Dennis search.
wow.
The money has gone mostly towards geophysical scans, equipment, legal fees, and hired labor.
Okay.
So the search for the treasure started in 1974 when Parada was 22 years old. He was working at the department store W.T. Grant where he sold furniture. The company was constantly bringing in acts and things to entice customers.
Mhm.
One day, there was a demonstration from a man called Professor Michael G. Malley, who claimed to be an expert in the extrasensory perception. Dennis didn't believe any of it, but during one of his breaks, Malley sat down with Dennis and some of his coworkers. At the time, someone happened to have a copy of the 1974 Treasure magazine article about the treasure.
Okay.
Someone asked Malley if he could do treasure hunts and asked him to look at the article, meaning like tell where they are, psychic shit, whatever.
Right.
Dennis says that Malley appeared to speed read the article, entered a kind of trance, and started to talk in voices that were not his own.
Oh.
Dennis told The Atlantic, quote, at least 3 different voices. It was like the soldiers talking about their experience, something like that. They're hungry, lost, I don't know. It was about 10, 15 minutes. I'm hearing all this, thinking, bullshit. Then Malley asked for an atlas that was sitting on the table and for a pen. The atlas was open to the general area described in the article, and Malley looked upwards, eyes to the ceiling, as he brought his pen down on the table. Dennis recalls, quote, the pen hit, and he looked right at me. He goes, Denny? I don't know how he knew my name. He goes, Denny, I want you to go to this spot. And it was Dent's room.
Interesting.
Malley instructed Dennis to get 5 dirt samples from the area, to only scoop up the dirt with a wooden spoon, and to keep each sample in a plastic container. Couldn't touch any metals.
Okay.
He said he could tell Dennis which one had been collected from the area closest to the gold. Dennis and a coworker went up to Dent's run and took 5 soil samples from various points up and down the mountain. To make things interesting, Dennis also took 3 samples from his stepfather's yard. When Dennis met with Malley, Malley instantly set aside the 3 that weren't from Dent's run, then selected sample number 5. Malley then told Dennis to look for a cave within 500 feet of where the soil had been taken. And that's how Dennis Parada came to believe that there was gold at Dent's Run.
Okay. All right. I can see the connections he's making.
So they found a cave in 2004, and he got back in touch with Malley to tell him the news, continued to stay in touch, and Dennis would periodically solicit Malley's insights about Dent's Run and other sites. Dennis has said that Malley has always been 100% accurate, and as a result, he promised Malley 25% of any proceeds from these searches.
Oh, wow. So he's like, he's like, here, if you're telling the truth, I got
Confident,
a big
I
portion
guess.
for you.
Yeah. So Chrissy, the reporter, writer from The Atlantic, who wrote an extensive expose about the treasure hunt in 2002, did some research into Malley. Not much can be found about him, minus a couple of different stage names and a few articles supporting Bill Clinton's impeachment.
Okay.
However, he did find an interesting tidbit about this guy. So a long-running podcast called Keith and the Girl, ran by 2 comedians in Queens, and it typically includes banter about current events and things like that. Their mission is, quote, Keith and his ex-girlfriend talk shit.
Okay.
One of the regular themes is Keith ranting about the failings of his father. He'd say things like, quote, he's just so full of lies and garbage, or my dad is a psychopath, without any exaggeration. It was discovered this father of the year was none other than Mike Malley. Heath called Keith to get his perspective about the treasure debacle and his father's involvement. Heath said that Keith seemed surprised by the context in which Heath had met his father and didn't have much memory of his dad hinting at any sort of treasure.
Right.
He did say, quote, I remember as a kid, I had to dig little holes as punishment. He added jokingly, I wonder if I was burying gold.
Huh.
Occasionally, Malley would allude to his sons about psychic ability. Keith said in response to being asked if he believed that his father truly believed he had powers, he said, quote, I wouldn't be surprised if he did. He does believe, for example, that God talks to him and he hears God's literal voice.
a lot of these stories with my dad. Who knows?
Okay.
So I guess I'll never know. The end. That's how I live. He's clearly not in touch with his father.
No, clearly.
Lastly, he found some information that either means something or absolutely nothing.
Good.
But in the spring of 1974, within a few weeks of the day when Mike Malley first met Dennis, Malley appeared in his local newspaper for a different reason. Just a few words, quote, Mr. and Mrs. Michael Malley, Somerset Road for boy, which marked the arrival of their son they would name Keith.
Oh.
So that either has nothing to do with it or... So fast forward to 2004 when Dennis was telling one of his tenants, Scott Farrell, about, everything that happened with this guy and the cave and whatnot. Like Dennis stopped looking for it, but he still talked about it.
Right, yeah.
All the time. So Farrell actually convinced him to take another look. In fact, it was Farrell who found the cave.
Oh.
And at the time when Dennis, Farrell, and Kem began to explore the cave, it was a slow and difficult process. They had to deal with the cramped environment,
No.
the wet and the mud,
No.
cave crickets,
Nope.
which according to Dennis, they are, quote, huge and they're comical. They've got big black eyes and they run like a little group of bad guys.
No.
Exactly.
I heard if I'm thinking of the right things, they kind of look like spiders or like spider-esque.
I certainly didn't look it up. The word cricket alone already told me it was gross.
Yeah. Oh, yuck.
They also found spiders, crawfish, and porcupines,
Oh,
which I thought was interesting.
I didn't know porcupines lived in caves.
And neither did I. That's why I found it interesting. They identified what they believed were clear signs of human occupation. Some charcoal burn marks on the ceiling, possibly from lit torches. And about 15 feet in, they found what seemed to be a man-made wall, which they managed to remove over the next 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
When I was thinking about it, because it said that like they went, twice a week, do a little, every day, like over and over and over again until it was gone.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of Shawshank Redemption when he's just little by little scooping himself out.
But yes, good analogy, Mackenzie.
Thank you. So the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, or DCNR, as we will call it, and hopefully my dyslexia doesn't make me say DNCR because,
Yeah.
So they said that the artifacts they found that the treasure hunters had found were, quote, hunting camp debris with no cultural or historical significance.
Mm-hmm.
In April 2012, the DCNR forbade finders keepers from conducting further, quote, treasure hunting activity. But that didn't stop Dennis. This is why Dennis had to go around the state in order to dig up the treasure because they had already told him that he couldn't dig up anything.
So if one says no, you go to someone else.
Yeah. Mom says no, let's go ask Dad.
Right.
When the Pratters and Gettler came to the site on March 12, 2018, they were met by FBI agent Archer. He told them that it was crowded up the hill and that they should wait down at the bottom. About 6 hours passed before they were escorted up to the snow-covered dig site where a backhoe was removing soil. The hole was already several feet deep, but nothing had been found. About an hour or two later, Archer stopped the proceedings because, quote, it's 4 o'clock. We've been up here all day. We're cold. We're hungry. We're going to pack it up for the night. Everybody go home. Come back here at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. We'll all come back up this hill together and we'll start digging right here where we left off.
Mm-hmm.
When the treasure hunters returned the next day, they expected to be taken right up the mountain.
Right.
However, just like the day before, that didn't happen. Archer had told them that there had been a water delay because the hole was filled with water, which might take a while to sort out. And he told them to stay in their car to keep warm. They did. And again, after hours of waiting, about 6, they were allowed up. Despite the past couple of days and Dennis's suspicion growing that something wasn't right, he still believed he was walking toward a moment of triumph.
Okay.
When the FBI crew parted, Archer said to them, quote, there, look in the hole. What do you see? When Dennis looked down, he could see that the hole was considerably deeper and wider than the one they had seen yesterday.
Duh.
Dennis replied, nothing. According to the Paradas and Gettler, on the way back to the car, they recall Archer lecturing them about not saying a word to anyone about this. He told the Paradas that they should change the name of their company because it'd be embarrassing after this, and that maybe they should go on holiday to Disney World.
Oh my gosh.
Not sure if those were his exact words or story embellishment. So after that, they were all convinced that the FBI removed 9 tons of gold from Dent's Run after the treasure hunters left on the first day of the dig, an excavation that secretly restarted that evening and continued through the night.
Oh my gosh.
So here are kind of like the, I guess, theories, so to speak, that the treasure hunters have come up with.
Okay.
Okay, so this is what the Atlantic article said. So it was basically once the men had decided that this is what happened, they looked back at every interaction and, of course, gave reason to why they happened. So, for example, when they arrived at Dent's Run at E15 on the second day, 15 minutes behind schedule, Archer had seemed irritated. They couldn't understand this back then, but they now saw how their late arrival threatened to throw off the choreographed movements of vehicles removing evidence. The treasure hunters have found multiple witnesses who believe they saw armored trucks in this period either parked for hours in nearby communities or traveling in convoys along nearby routes. And there were also periodic closures of the main route in and out of Dent's Run. But the FBI denies this. Apparently, Archer had a cut on the back of his hand on the second day, and there was dirt and mud on his knees. This part I think is kind of funny. So they logged him visiting a porta potty 5 times, which apparently is indicative of someone who had been drinking coffee all night.
That is so specifically random.
I know.
Yes, he went to the bathroom 5 times. He was definitely drinking coffee all night long.
This guy who wrote this article, I think, does a really good job of like, look, there's some things that make sense that these guys say, but it also could be total bullshit.
Right.
So he's like very good about that.
Okay, good.
So the water in the hole story, the treasure hunters note that when they were finally allowed to see the hole, there was no sign of any water at the bottom, nor was there any indication that water had been pumped out into the surrounding snow area.
Right, that's what I would be curious about. Like, does it look wet?
Apparently, Gettler had heard Archer muttering, "I hate this case." And so because Archer, who generally seemed like a good guy, was uncomfortable with the deception, he was obligated to stage manage, apparently.
Okay.
And of course, all of this was why they had been permitted to see so little of the actual excavation.
Yeah, duh.
Right. Okay, so this part's kind of crazy, but I really felt like it was something that would be included. So, my headphones are saying low battery.
Oh no, Mackenzie.
I know. So in February 2020, on an episode of American Mystery, Dennis mentioned one scenario that sounded pretty out there. He said, quote, "If somebody in the United States wants to make our gold disappear," he proposed that they could have secretly shipped it to Russia, pretended it had been dug out of a Russian gold mine, and brought it back to North America. 9 tons of gold disappeared from Dent's Run. Dennis said, quote, "And within 48 hours, an airplane in Russia dropped 9 tons of gold on the runway." Absurd?
But why would you go through that?
Probably. But the runway incident is a real one. And on March 15, 2018, 2 days after the dig began, a plane in Siberia lost 3.4 tons of its 9-ton cargo of gold and silver when the cargo door accidentally opened soon after takeoff. There's a video on YouTube of the bars scattered across the runway. For coincidence, it's a remarkable one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just why would you go through the trouble of let's send it to Russia just so Russia can send it back?
Right. So this guy makes a really good point here of like, the most problematic thing has probably been because the FBI has been very reluctant to clarify anything.
Right.
And he says, maybe the agents don't consider themselves in the explaining business, but in the space created by their silence at a time when people are primed to embrace any suggestion of government malfeasance. Thank you. The treasure hunters' version of events is one that has been heard. The FBI's decision to keep them away from the excavation seems to have been a spectacular misjudgment. Did the agents really imagine that these people who, without seeing the evidence or lack of it with their own eyes, would easily accept this outcome? If so, they have since learned otherwise. For 4 years now, in articles and documents and podcasts, the treasure hunters have berated and accused the FBI and weaponized the agency's silence as a sign of guilt. So in August of 2019, the FBI acknowledged to the Finders Keepers attorney that they have about 2,378 pages and 17 CDs of video files of, quote, potentially responsive media.
Because, of
Wow.
course, they filed one of those Freedom of Information Acts.
Mm-hmm.
But the FBI had stonewalled them, so then they sued them.
Ugh.
But said that producing such a large volume of materials requires an average of 47 months.
Wow.
The Associated Press and the Philadelphia Inquirer also filed an FOIA lawsuit, which resulted in the release of the FBI affidavit in 2001 that made it clear just how much the agency had once argued for the presence of this gold. Because remember, the FBI had to take all of this and go to a federal judge and ask for a warrant to
Right.
dig it up.
Right.
And they took the stuff they found with their geo survey and whatnot. So in May of 2022, the FBI released 1,035 pages, which included some historical research, the data from the promising geophysical scan, and an abundance of photos, and like an obscene amount.
Yeah.
Chris and I had the exact same thought. I looked at the pictures before I read his article, and I was like, beautiful. So glad we're on the same page. He said, quote, "The images of bare trees against a snowy hilltop are surprisingly artful. Revelatory, they are not." Like, it is just so many nature pictures. And at one point I was like, I mean, these are nice pictures, but why are you taking so many pictures of this?
Right. What does this have to do with anything?
Exactly. The government filed a series of unnecessary petitions to delay the releasing of any video evidence until August, I'm assuming of 2022.
Mhm.
And thereafter, only at a rate of 15 minutes worth a month.
Wow.
Like, damn. So
Wow.
one woman who like lives nearby had told Heath that she heard noises like hammering and beeping at about 10 or 11 that night.
Mm.
After a while, she went outside to see what was going on and told Heath, quote, "And that mountain was lit. They had lots of lights up there. You could see the whole sky lit up." The noise carried on and she couldn't sleep. She eventually called her husband, who was away on business, and he confirmed to Heath that his wife had called him in the middle of the night to say that she couldn't sleep because of all the, quote, racket up there. Lights
Oh my
everywhere.
gosh.
It was lit up like the 4th of July. Dennis says that a 10% finder's fee from what they believe was at Dent's Run would be about the low end of $60 million.
10%?
And that's at the low end.
Oh my God.
Dennis said he has told his lawyer that if they offer anything below 20 million to, quote, hang up on them and tell them to kiss your ass. We're going to court. Most of all, Dennis is fighting for his reputation. He told Heath, quote, "I want to get my credibility back. I have a lot of friends who laugh at me. They go, 'Oh, Denny, did you find any gold this week? How are you
Aw.
doing with the FBI?' Laughing at my back." He said he'll do whatever it takes to find out the truth and expose the FBI to the world. So in June of 2022, so this is all like in the last year and a half.
Right.
Timeline's a little funky, so bear with me. So in June of 2022, Finders Keepers is saying that they have evidence that the FBI indeed shot a video footage of the dig because they're trying to say, we don't got enough footage. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
They had been pressing the government to produce the 17 relevant files. Then without explanation, the FBI reduced the number to 4. Under court order, the agency finally revealed what it said were the contents of those 4 videos. And it turns out it had been provided to the FBI by Finders Keepers. So basically, what I gathered is they said they had these 17 videos. Then they're like, just kidding, we have 4. And when they finally explained it, they're like, oh, the 4 we have is what you gave us.
That's suspicious.
Right. The FBI did not say it had any video of the actual excavation, which is what Finders Keepers is seeking. The treasure hunters say that the evidence, the FBI indeed shot video of the dig, and they are seeking sanctions against the FBI for what their lawyer casts as a blatant bad faith effort to mislead.
Yeah.
March 13th, 2018, Parada's hidden trail camera captured what appears to be an FBI agent in front of a video camera at the hillside dig site, with other agents in the background. The trail cam image was included in a legal file by their lawyer, Ann Wiseman, who represents Finders Keepers in its Freedom of Information lawsuit against the government.
Mhm.
The photo, quote, suggests either the FBI has falsely claimed to have no other responsive videotapes or the FBI illegally destroyed responsive videotapes in an effort to circumvent the FOIA's disclosure requirements.
Oh, both are not good.
Wiseman asked a judge to order the Justice Department to pay a portion of the Finder Keeper's legal fees to compensate for the legal wrangling over the videos and to hold the FBI accountable for, quote, covering up the results of its excavation that highly advanced scientific technology indicated contained multiple tons of gold. Gettler told the AP, Associated Press,
Quote, for the FBI to now say it has no videotapes of the dig strains credulity and takes this whole affair to the next level. We have incontrovertible photographic evidence of them videotaping the dig and interviewing their operational leader at the site. It raises a lot of serious questions.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. In addition to seeking legal fees, Wiseman also asked the court to give finders keepers the ability. I can't say that fucking name without just like thinking of children, finders keepers, losers sweepers.
Right. I love it though.
Just great name, but just take some of the seriousness out of this. So also wanted to give them the ability to dispose 3 FBI officials: Jacob Archer of the FBI's art crime team in Philadelphia, who oversaw the dig, the unidentified videographer shown in the trail cam still, and Michael Siddell, the FBI section chief for records dissemination. Wiseman, who was a veteran FOIA lawyer who formerly worked at the Justice Department, said in an interview, quote, "We want to answer 2 questions. Did the FBI create videotapes during the excavation? The picture certainly seems to answer that question. And if so, what happened to the videotapes? It seems to me that these are the people best suited to have that information." Wiseman indicated in court documents that the Justice Department opposes both requests. So February 2023,
Oh my
a
gosh.
year ago,
Yeah.
it seems that the FBI did finally release that video. I think they were court ordered to.
Oh, so the video that they didn't have.
Correct. Because CBS News reported an FBI videographer was on hand to document it, at one point interviewing a Philadelphia-based agent on the FBI's art crime team who explained why the FBI was in the woods. So this is what is on the video that
Oh.
I guess you can now see. Why the FBI was in the woods of one of Pennsylvania's most sparsely populated counties.
Mm-hmm.
He is heard saying, quote, "We've identified through our investigation a site that we believe has U.S. property, which includes a significant sum of base metal, which is valuable, particularly gold, maybe silver." The agent said on the video, his face is blurred, obviously to protect his privacy.
Obviously, yeah.
He was calling it a 155-year-old cold case, and he said the FBI had cooperated Parada's information about the location of the reputed gold through scientific testing. And he stressed that the test results did not prove the presence of gold. Only a dig would help law enforcement, quote, "get to the bottom of the story once and for all." This is all what the agent said.
Mm-hmm.
The Paradas and Gettler are now focusing on the official gold dig timeline. They think they have found an issue with the presence or absence of snow and images and timing of a storm that had briefly disrupted the operation. CBS reported, quote, "For example, an FBI image that was supposed to have been taken about an hour after the squall," I'm assuming that just means like a small storm,
Yeah, it's like the wind and stuff.
"does not show any snow on a large moss-covered boulder at the dig site. That same boulder is now covered in a photo that FBI records indicate was taken the next morning, some 15 hours after the storm." They accused the FBI of altering the sequence of events to conceal an overnight excavation. I looked through these photos. It's too hard to fucking tell.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah. They're black and white.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And they all look like that they were during the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, the way that they've darkened some of the parts of a photo, I'm like, you could easily brighten up that part,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So according to CBS, there are some other components that don't add up. So some of these are probably ones we've been over, but some of these might be a little new. So they say that 1, the FBI initially turned over hundreds of photos, but rendered them in low resolution, high contrast black and white, making it impossible to tell them the time of day they were taken, or even in some cases, what they show, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
The treasure hunters went back and requested several dozen of the photos in color, which the FBI provided. 2, the agency did not provide any video of the second and final day of the dig, nor did it produce any photos or videos showing what the FBI's own hand-drawn map described as a 30-foot long, 12-foot deep trench, which the treasure hunters claim could have only been dug overnight. Government lawyers acknowledge these gaps in the photo and video records, but they do not elaborate in the court filing.
Interesting.
So they've kind of said, "Oh, yeah," and then they just nothing else. Consulting firm hired by the FBI to assess the possibility of gold produced a report on its findings, but the version given to the treasure hunters seems to be missing key pages. And number 4, the FBI did not provide any of its agents travel and expense invoices, which could also shed further light on the dig timeline.
Interesting.
So Parada's dispute with the FBI is playing out in federal court where a judge overseeing the case must decide whether the FBI will have to release its operational plan for the gold dig and other records it wants to keep secret. The judge could also order the FBI to keep looking for additional materials to turn over to the treasure hunters. The Justice Department did not address the treasure hunters' most explosive claims of a possible cover-up in its latest legal filing. The government instead told a federal judge in Washington, D.C., that the FBI had satisfied its legal obligation to the treasure hunters to search for its records of the dig and asked for the case to be closed.
Of course they want it closed.
So as of October 2023, like 5 months ago, the FBI was still refusing to hand over its operational plan for the gold dig and other records the government seems are exempt from disclosure. A U.S. district judge told the FBI on September 27th they need to come up with a better justification for keeping the disputed records under wraps. According to the AP, Parada hasn't given up on his search in the Dense Run area. He recently hired a New Jersey geophysical company that identified several underground anomalies near the site of the original FBI dig, one of which measures 25 feet by 8 feet.
Oh.
Finders Keepers' own equipment detected metal objects in the same location, perhaps 15 feet down, presumably in a tunnel or cave, said Parada, playing a video that shows a detector emitting a high-pitched squeal as it swept across the ground. He's now seeking to partner with the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, his original enemy, which owns the land, on a new excavation in Dense Run. Parada and his lawyer and top officials from the conservation agency plan to meet later this month, and he told the press, quote, "It's a part of our history that's hidden away, and I think it's time that it should be told." So obviously there are very mixed thoughts about this legitimacy.
Yeah.
But I felt like our boy Chris really just kind of put the whole situation nicely together. So he said, "Picking my way through this strange tale's tendrils, I found myself thinking a lot about treasure and treasure hunts. I couldn't shake this disconcerting feeling that there may be a lot more treasure hunting out there than actual treasure. Perhaps to a hugely disproportionate degree. This community feels like a group feeding hungrily on its own collective belief, creating a kind of circular logic. If so many people are chasing so much and finding what seem like so many promising leads, then at least a good amount of what they are searching for must be out there, right? And yet, if there really were so many grand treasure hoards, wouldn't more of them have been discovered by now? By both chance, as we churn up the land beneath us, and by use of all the modern technologies that those who bury the treasure would never imagine. Still, the dream of treasure relies on possibility, and in the case of Dense Run, possibility remains. Plenty of people, maybe with a gleam in their eye and a spring in their step, will glimpse enough in this story that just doesn't make sense to make them suspect that the gold was real. We may not have it yet, but we will. And if some of us are drawn to a different conclusion, say that a psychic talking to a furniture salesman triggered a wild goose chase that 44 years later led dozens of FBI agents to dig up a snow-covered Pennsylvania mountainside where nothing ever was, that is doubly our loss. So, did the government cover it up? Was it there to begin with?
Kind of sounds, they just sound very suspicious. And when you sound suspicious, people are going to have questions.
Right. And that was kind of like this Heath guy's point of like, there might not be anything here, which is fair, but you're not doing yourself any favor by keeping your mouth shut.
Exactly. 100%. Yep.
And he also made a good point too, that like maybe the comment that Archer said about like this being the worst case is like there was a sense of embarrassment that the FBI had put so much effort into this and then nothing came up of it.
I mean, maybe very well could be the thing too.
Yeah. And they're just like, okay, it's done. It's not here. Bye. Like, see you later. And then it just
Right.
became, super bigger.
They sound suspicious.
I thought so too. And I like, but here's my thing. When I think about these things, I always have to stop and be like, what motivation would they have had to do that?
Money.
You just found 26 gold bars. You don't have enough?
People get greedy.
I guess. But I just figured with like a U.S. government corporation. I mean, like what does the government gain from saying that the gold was never there? Besides not having to pay the finder's fee.
Money. They can keep it. They can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah.
And keeping that money away from someone else.
Just money though?
Yeah. Money equals power, Mackenzie.
I know, but the government, it's the government. It's not got so much money.
Do you think
'Cause,
they don't want more?
Well, the thing is like they would keep the 26 gold bars because it is government property. So that is already going back to them anyway.
Right.
So the only thing they would maybe pay for is the finder's fee, which is just 10%. And I'm like, I feel like if there is a reason for them to be covering it up, I feel like it's got to be more than money.
I don't know, because, like, if you think about it, think how much money we get taken out for taxes. Does the government really need even more of my money? No, but they take it.
No.
I just think it's for the fact of, like, having the money and being like, this is ours. Like, no one else can have this. This is ours.
Hmm.
We're a
Yeah.
greedy country.
I don't disagree with you. I definitely 100% see the logic behind that. I just feel like there's got to be something more.
I mean, there might be, but
Because I feel like, when there's a reward if you find information.
yeah.
I feel like they never actually give those to people because they always make up some convoluted reason as to why what they did doesn't count.
Right, yeah.
And so I kind of imagine, like, for something like this, they would try to do the same thing. And so besides the money,
Maybe.
is there something about them acknowledging that the gold was there that would be problematic? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know, but there's all sorts of rumors and things of Confederacy gold and treasure hidden all up and down between here and Canada. So,
Oh, I can imagine.
yeah.
That is not
But
a doubt in my mind.
I thought it was an interesting point that the guy had made about, like, there seems to be a lot more treasure hunting than there does treasures.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was interesting. Which, I mean, it's true. But I
Absolutely.
feel like some of the treasure hunting, maybe it's like the Curse of Oak Island.
Oh.
They keep trying to find that treasure there. So you have all these treasure hunters, but it's in one spot. So maybe
Right.
it's something like that where it's like all these treasure hunters, but they're all in one spot. Or like they're focused so much on one thing that like you can keep adding the number of treasure hunters, but the locations they're searching aren't getting bigger.
Correct. And it's also like after a while, like you're gonna run into it.
If
You
it's
know what I mean?
there.
Like, well, right, if it like that, yeah, if it's there, and some of these have been rumored for centuries, decades, and people have been looking for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of feel like when I hear about like current stories, I'm like, don't you think somebody already got it?
Yeah, maybe. God
Like,
didn't tell anyone.
like maybe even if it was by accident, like maybe they just fucking found it already.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, maybe.
I feel
Kept
like
it
they
a
should start.
secret.
Yeah,
Felt like, cashed it, left.
they should start putting those like little notes, like when in TV shows when they're on like a little scavenger hunt and they open it up and it's like, I beat you here. Ha ha, ha, I win. They should just like leave a little note like, ha ha, ha, I win.
Yeah, yeah, to be like, this is where the treasure was, but you're a little too late.
Yes, 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 yes. So yeah, you can see all the FBI documents on. Oh, that was the other thing. I don't know if this is every case that they have released the documents for, but it had this like whole thing of like some of these don't like relay the not perspective, but like when someone's trying to say like, oh, that doesn't represent how we feel or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was strange because I was like, I don't remember this popping up for the last time I was here,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know.
I don't know.
I know.
Well, this
So
is
it's bizarre.
fascinating.
Yeah. Isn't it?
It is. It's very suspicious. There's something there.
Yeah. Well, and here's my thing. I can't see the soldiers who supposedly stole some, buried the rest. You're not going to scatter that shit out. You're just going to put it somewhere and go.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Right.
Mm.
Well, nicely done.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Yeah, like I said, I forgot what this was about. And so I looked.
So it was a fun surprise for you as well.
Yes. I saw it on an episode of Unexplained
Well, there you go.
about American treasures.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So.
Well, a
Well, that's
treasure
all I
to us would be rating and reviewing us.
Oh, wow. Look at you. That was beautiful.
Thank you. If you rate and review us, send us an email to ascarystatepodcast@gmail.com and we will thank you very much. And we will send you a little sticker.
Yes, we will thank you and send you.
If you have any case recommendations, please let us know. We love recommendations. We love to cover things that maybe we never would have found anyways.
Correct. Absolutely. We're really close to having enough listener stories.
Yes. So just send us in a couple more and we'll be able to do a listeners episode, which are so fun too. Again, ascarystatepodcast@gmail.com.
Yes,
And
yes.
I think that's all we have for you. So thanks for bearing with us as we had all of our technical difficulties and stay scary.
And stay safe and healthy.